Welcome to Money Matters on TV360 Nigeria. I am Adeshewa Odushoga. It's almost a year since President Muhammadu Buhari ordered the closure of land borders with Benin Republic and other neighboring countries to curtail smuggling activities and illicit trade. But as much as this move has been yielding positive results, which is the initial cause, this may be affecting businesses in Nigeria, especially those struggling to recover from the shocks of the effect of COVID-19. At a recent presidential policy dialogue of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo allayed the fears of Nigerian investors when he mentioned that the federal government is now in talks with the organized private sectors and other concerned bodies concerning the reopening of the land borders. The Vice President also noted that the federal government has commenced the execution of the sustainability measures contained in the Economic Sustainability Plan. Of course, this includes the stimulus package of 2.3 trillion naira to boost local production, prevent business collapse, and provide liquidity across various sectors, especially micro, small, and medium enterprises.
This is a time when many are out of work. We already have significant unemployment problems without the pandemic. With the pandemic, it means that many who do daily paid work are experiencing most difficulty because of lockdowns and frequent disruptions. It also means that several people who are already well engaged in local industry are suffering. I mean, caterers, for example, are suffering. People in hospitality are suffering. Even mechanics, practically everyone who is engaged in these small businesses that have sustained their economy are suffering. So there's a need for us to provide a much more effective safety net. And this is one of the planned objectives of government. But we also require in every possible way the support of the private sector. The NCCI is, of course, well aware of the commitment of the federal government to providing an enabling environment for business to thrive. And of course, the Honourable Minister has already spoken about the ways in which we have tried to improve the business environment. And our aim, of course, is to do this on a progressive basis and to continue to seek to improve the business environment. Now, I want to say that there is a lot to be done in improving the business environment. There's no question at all in my mind that there is a lot to be done. And we really need to spend more time, and what I say we are talking to the public sector as well as the private sector, to look at creative ways of solving some of these problems. Some of the problems, of course, are problems of the environment that we can deal with. Others are attitudinal problems, problems of governance and all of that. But I think that it's in our interest, in the interest of our economy, to really work through these issues. And there are several issues. I think we will probably have more time to discuss that during the course of the interaction. But the chair of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Mabudu, has already touched on some of the challenges that we're experiencing in the business environment. And this is not lost on the federal government at all. And we're very committed to trying to resolve these problems and to see how we can create a much better environment for business. We're not, just as I said, we're not under any illusion that we can do this on our own. Everything that we achieve will have to be done lockstep with the private sector. So I think that we really, in these times, I think what we've seen in these times is that Nigerians and Nigerian businesses can be creative and are being creative. It's very quick transition from in-person meetings to Zoom meetings, virtual meetings, shows the tremendous resilience of the Nigerian business, and of course, of the Nigerian people as a whole. And we've seen how very quickly We've adapted to practically all that's going on in our environment. And I think that the task ahead is challenging. And I believe very strongly that the LCCI, working with government and several other private sector organizations, that we will together be able to resolve a lot of these issues. And that this period of the pandemic will provide us with the best opportunity to do something significant and to really make a difference in the Nigerian economy. I believe that this is the best possible time for us as a nation to do something about our business environment. We can take advantage of these difficulties. Clearly, there are major opportunities in this very difficult period. And I urge you to join us in doing whatever is necessary to ensure that not only do we sustain growth, keep jobs, but also that we modernize our economy and make this country a place where everyone, local and international, would like to do business.
Now, we know that all of these are part of the federal government's efforts to designed to ward off a deep recession and effect significant changes in the economy. But there are questions yet left unanswered, and I won't be doing this alone. Joining me now to discuss this is Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Muda Yusuf, who will be joining me via Skype. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, the federal government is considering reopening of land borders, one that was shut to curtail smuggling and illicit trade. Now, can we say it's safe to reopen the borders now and it's not going to affect the reason it was shut in the first place?
Yes, I believe it is safe to open the borders now. I say that because I believe that a few lessons have been learned, both from the private sector and the public sector. And I believe that a few measures have been put in place to ensure better compliance with those who engage in cross-border trade. The capacity of those who also have the responsibility to enforce compliance at the borders, I presume that the capacity has been strengthened. I expect that better use of technology has been deployed, and better consultation with our neighboring countries to ensure that we get the cooperation of also the neighboring countries to ensure proper compliance with the ECOWAS protocols. So with all that in place, I believe that the border can be reopened. I believe we are ready for the reopening of the borders.
Okay, so what were the major complaints by Nigerian investors when the borders were still shut? I say that they say that it's affecting businesses, particularly at this time with the effect of COVID-19. What do you think was the challenge for these businesses in Nigeria?
Well, the challenges that businesses have faced with the closure of the border, first, it has seriously affected cross-border trade. The bulk of the exports, the non-oil exports that we have in Nigeria, are trade that go to the West African sub-region. Close to 80 or 90% of our non-oil exports trade is with the neighboring countries. And most of this trade are done by road, not by sea, because it is easier for the exporters, and many of them are also small-scale businesses, so they don't have the capacity to engage in trading by sea. Apart from that, the challenges at our seaports are quite enormous that many exporters cannot cope with those challenges. So that has slowed down the exports to the neighboring countries, to West African sub-region, and even to some African countries. It has also affected access to raw material by some local manufacturing companies, because they get most of their raw materials also from the neighboring countries. So these are the ways in which it has affected businesses. Many small businesses that also engage in cross-border trade have also been affected. So the effect has been quite pronounced for businesses and for the citizens generally.
Now, let's talk about the plans of the federal government, of course, to restore the economy in Nigeria. Now, an economic sustainability plan with a financial commitment of 2.3 trillion naira to support vulnerable sectors. Yes, this is a good one, particularly at this time where the effect of the pandemic on businesses is unquantifiable. But this is barely 1.5% of the national income. Would this have any significance at all?
Can you come again? I didn't quite hear you.
I said the economic sustainability plan, which was the 2.3 trillion naira plan by the federal government to support vulnerable sectors. We know that this is a good one, particularly at this time, especially for businesses. But this is barely 1.5% of the national income. Looking at the GDP as well, would this have any significance at all?
Well, it could have some impact. Don't forget that the government also has its own constraints, particularly on the financial side. Government revenue has crashed significantly, especially because of the collapse in crude oil price, government revenue, and all of that. So government also has its limitations. But this intervention within the economic sustainability plan is also targeted at some sectors. It's not supposed to be an economy-wide intervention. So some sectors have been identified, and don't forget, it's also a plan that has to be executed within 1 year. It's a 12-month intervention plan. We already also have the budget, which also will complement whatever emergency response the economic sustainability plan will put in place. So within the context of the capacity of the government to provide financing, I think it's a good thing. It's a good step in the right direction. And I think it will have some impact if properly implemented and if properly targeted at the vulnerable sectors of vulnerable segments of the economy or the society.
Also, at the dialogue, I understand that the representative of the United Nations Sustainable Development Group raised the issue of African Continental Free Trade Agreement. What impact would you say this would play in the restoration of Africa's economy, particularly at this time?
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a very important tool for the economic development of the whole of Africa. Because trade is a critical instrument of investment, it's a critical instrument of economic development. So to the extent that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will facilitate trade within the continent, and there's a relationship between the level of trade and the level of investment and the level of economic development. So we believe that because of the economies of scale that a larger trade will bring about within the sub-region, within the continent, it will impact the economies of all the countries in Africa, particularly those who have the capacity to also trade competitively within the continent. So it is going to bring quite a lot of value to the economies of all the countries in the continent.
All right, Mr. Muda, so please permit me to have you on a standby. Let's quickly go on a short break now and we'll be right back. We'll go on a short break now and we'll be right back.
Corruption not in my country.
Hello, Alahaji. Right now I'm in Abuja. No. Hello, Adamu. Right now I'm in Kano. Yes. When I get back, I will just call you. Look, what is wrong with you? I'm talking on the phone and you are gesticulating and doing. What's wrong with you?
Daddy, where exactly are we at this place?
Are you alright? This is Lagos.
Well, you just lied to someone that we are in Abuja.
Keep quiet. Who told you can tell an elderly person is lying?
Daddy, you just lied. And by lying, you are raising corrupt children for the future of Nigeria. That is corruption, not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country? I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly. God forbid that I go to join that
DG 360, providing clarity to issues.
Welcome back. President Muhammad Buhari has signed the instrument of accession of the agreement for the establishment of African Trade Insurance Agency. The agreement and the agency are registered with the Secretariat of the United Nations in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. This is in cognizance of the fact that lack of adequate political, non-commercial and commercial risk insurance is a significant barrier to the availability of finance for investment in Africa and the expansion of African foreign trade and intra-African trade. Now, the agency, when executed, will acknowledge previous multilateral efforts made by African states towards regional economic integration through cooperation in trade liberalization and development so as to attain sustainable growth. Now, I still have Muda Yusuf on standby to discuss this with me. Thank you for standing by, sir. Let me start by asking you. This treaty is signed by Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. What does it mean for Nigeria?
Well, it's a very important agreement, and that has been signed because it's about managing risk. Because it's a African Trade Insurance Agency. It's about managing the risk of trading within the continent. And one of the biggest challenges we have had with investors that want to do business with Nigeria and with many other African economies is about the risk, especially the political risk and the policy risk. These two risks are elements that have been impeding the flow of trade and the flow of investment in Africa. So now that we have this instrument in place, it will help to mitigate the risk of trade and the risk of investment within the continent. So the opportunities and the prospects of attracting more investment into Africa and into Nigeria in particular, I think is likely to be boosted as a result of these instruments that have been put in place. Because the whole idea of this is to mitigate the risk of investment and to mitigate the risk of trade in Africa. So it's a very good development for Africa. It's a very good development for the economy of Nigeria as well as that of other African countries.
Well, we know that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is still on the way. Now, what connection will this treaty have with the agreement when eventually commenced?
Of course, it will. We already have quite a reasonable number of signatories to the agreement. A lot of countries have endorsed it, and many countries have ratified it. And so when you have this kind of treaty or this kind of agency in place that helps to reduce the risk of trade, it's going to complement whatever we have in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So it's a complementary legislation or a complementary agreement which will help to accelerate the achievement of the objective of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So it's something that is going to complement the AFCTA in a very, very good way.
Now, this treaty, now that the president has signed, how massive will this boost investment in Nigeria? Let's come down to Nigeria now.
It's going to boost a lot of investment because investors generally are worried about risk. They are worried about changes in policy. They are worried about changes in government, changes in administration, changes in ministers, because all of these things have a way of impacting the risk of investment. So if you have all this risk properly insured, then we are likely to see a very significant impact on trade and investment in Africa and also in Nigeria.
Well, Mr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's how much we can take on the program. You can watch us again on our YouTube channel at TV360 Nigeria. Also on Facebook is TV360 Online. Then follow us across all of our social media platforms. I am Adeshewa Ojushoga. Bye for now.